There we go. We
Perfect.
got the recording started. That's good. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Roy Canterbury, and this is Arch Talk 101, the podcast. And we get a chance to talk to all kinds of cool archers around the world. And we have one on the line with us today, and we're gonna talk about some really cool stuff. So, welcome to the show, Jason.
Hi, Roy. It's a real pleasure to be on the show with you. I know it's been in the works for quite some time, and we're finally making it happen.
Yeah. Well, how about if you introduce yourself and then give us a little background history of you and your start into archery?
Great. Well, I'm Jason Acorn. I'm 52. I live in Alberta, Canada. I've been hunting my whole life, and I got into the hunting industry 17 years ago with my partner Calvin Buckler, and I started a hunting show called The Boneyard. And we were on TV on Wild TV. We did a stint down in the States and on TV. Wasn't the Sportsman's Channel. It was, it'll come to me. But that was short lived. But we made a real name for ourselves up in Canada here with our TV show because we didn't really conform to the normal routine with hunting shows and how they edit and how they sort of lay out their scripts and stuff. We were a little crazy, so we gained a we were notorious for crossing the line, sort of say. We weren't too serious, but when we hunted, we definitely were. And here we are 17 years later, and we're still doing it. We're on YouTube now. My clips get noticed all around the world at times, which is pretty cool. But we really have evolved. Doing our show, we realized how hard it was to get sponsors. It was a real struggle, up and down. We'd get lots one year, the next year, it was just really quiet. And we decided, well, why don't we become our own sponsor? So we initially got into trail cameras, and that was a bit of a disaster because they're expensive for one. For two, every year you have to make new innovative products, and it was more money and more money. So we sort of scrapped that. But we had a moment where we really sat down and thought about what could we do that's really going to help us. And we started an arrow company called Killin Stix. Again, sort of living off our boneyard name a little bit and doing something edgy. And we are now 11 years in with our arrow company. We sell arrows worldwide. We have some really good stores in the States. Um, we are now breaking into Mexico, where I think that's really going to take off for us. But the Arrow Company has really been fantastic. It is the show brought us to a lot of places, but the Arrow Company has brought us to a lot of people. We've met a lot of interesting people. We sponsor a lot of people, clubs, children's, lots of kids, and some of the most the biggest names we have are one is Chad Mendez, ex UFC fighter. He's been shooting our arrows for about 6 years. Chad, he's a torquey guy, but sort of small in stature. He's like 5'6", so his arrow's really short. And he came to me. I met him through trade shows, and he was saying he wasn't getting penetration. He couldn't kill animals. And I hooked him up with our micro LT. It's a 4 mil arrow with a really good outsert, and he has not looked back. He is killing everything. He just had a banner year last year with his bow. So I'm really excited for him, and it's always exciting watching him go to his next hunting camp and see what he's going to kill with my arrows. It's been really exciting for us. And another big name would be the great Jim Shockey. has started shooting my arrows, and it was just a chance meeting that I had with him at a trade show. We started talking. We talked for hours, and lo and behold, he's shooting my arrows now, which is just fantastic. Um, but the arrow company has really pushed us forward, and has allowed us to be able to hunt more. Really, that was the whole reason of doing it. It has freed up a lot for us, because the struggle of gaining sponsors has been so tough. Um, we have 9 different arrows plus crossbow bolts, anywhere from a 6 mil, 5 mil, 4 mil arrow, um, from a 0.005 straightness all the way to a 0.001. When you get up to it's all premium carbon fiber. This is the best carbon you can have on an arrow. We have a specialty arrow, like our 0.001 arrows, Roy, are just so superb. They're super tight tolerances when it comes to spine consistency. Weight consistency are like on point. I'm talking point 5 plus or minus grains
So,
for
hey,
weight.
Jason, I actually brought up your website, killinstix.com. So I can
Yes.
share that and we can go through it and actually show those that not just the listeners, but people will watch the video so they can
Okay.
actually see that. So let me see if we can do a share,
Fantastic.
and I'll share sound in case only with sound. Okay, so now you should be seeing your Killing Stick website.
I sure do.
Okay, so now we can kind of go through here. So those that are watching the video, like on YouTube or in the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, they'll actually be able to see that. And those listening on the podcast, well, go to one of those places and watch the video.
Oh, fantastic. That's perfect, Roy.
So we were talking about arrows, and we can go through any one of them you want here. Um, yeah.
Well, I think it's important to let everybody know that all of our arrows are a premium carbon fiber, from our most affordable all the way to our most expensive arrow. It doesn't mean that you have to shoot a 4 mil higher priced arrow to be successful. Our Hawkeye arrow, which is our most affordable 6 mil arrow, has been absolutely around the world knocking stuff down left and right, and 50-yard groups tight. Once you cut an arrow, if it's a 0.005 arrow, and once you cut a couple 2-3 inches off it, you're looking at a 0.3 or better. And what I'm saying is that you might have 1 or 2 arrows that are a 0.003 straightness, but all the rest are going to be even better than that. And I take great pride in letting people know that our arrows are different than a normal arrow. Just with the consistencies, like I said, I could talk about our arrows all day. When you're thinking about a point or a 6 mil arrow, our highest end arrow is our PT series, and that arrow is absolutely flawless. Just a great arrow. Spins just so nice. The weights are identical, and the spine is unmatched. Now, I need to maybe explain to some people when they are looking at arrows what the most important aspects of an arrow is that makes them so good. And it's not just spinning an arrow and seeing if it wobbles a little bit. The number one is the spine consistency. You need to put it on a spine index machine, and when it goes around, if it's within plus or minus 5 points, you have an identical arrow. So, and weighing arrows too is number two, your most important. So when you going back to the spine, if you have 12 arrows in your quiver, they're all a 350 spine, you got to dig a little deeper. That tells you you have the right spine, but how consistent is the spine? And Killin Stix arrows are so on point. It's hard to find the spine. It's like an Atlas arrow or Ultra arrow where they say they're spineless. Well, these are pretty much spineless. And number two is the weight consistency. Every arrow in your quiver needs to weigh the same. Like that's a no brainer, right? Or you're going to be
Right.
high or low. Very important. And then way back in third place is the straightness. It can have a little bit of wobble, but if your spine and your weight is the same, your arrows are still going to hit in the same spot. And I have done that. Going back to our first year in the arrow business, we had a different factory, and they sort of duped us. So we ended up having to go through all our arrows and spin them. And I shot all the crooked arrows and I killed everything with those arrows. So it really sort of made me aware that the straightness is important, but it is not as important as the other two aspects of spine and weight. So moving through, we have 3.6 or 6 mil arrows. And then we get down to our ventilator, which is a 0.5 arrow. And that's what I really started out shooting once we got the arrow company rocking and rolling. And the ventilator is an unbelievable 5 mil arrow. It's got a stainless steel half out, 60 grain half out. It's a heavy arrow and just a super arrow. Flies great. The spine, the weights are just really super tight. And then we get down to our 4 mil arrows, which we sell a ton of. The highest end arrow that we have that I want to talk about is our micro LT. It is a special arrow within our special arrow lineup. And the reason, oh, there's Chad Mendez right there. The reason why our micro LTs are so special is that the arrow is made with double the carbon fiber tonnage. So it's over 40 ton carbon fiber. What that means is that it makes the arrow super strong and super stiff, and we are able to drop the weight. It is actually the micro light arrow or the LT. It's super light, way lighter than our micro ventilator, which is also a 4 mil. But this arrow, once you shoot the arrow and you release the arrow, it corrects itself immediately. And then when you hit that animal or target, the arrow is so stiff and strong, it doesn't vibrate, losing that kinetic energy. It retains it. And that arrow is like rebar, and it just keeps going. And it is an unbelievable arrow. And a lot of our top shooters, like Mitchell Payment, Moment of Truth, up here, he's got a great show up here in Canada. He shoots them, and he has had so much luck with them. Chad Mendez, Jim Shockey, Corey Anderson, myself, Kelvin Buckler shoots them, my partner. They are the greatest arrow, I believe, on the planet. I might be biased, but I'm telling you, I can talk about those arrows all day long. They are just fantastic. With those LTs, we have multiple outsert scenarios. You can have a 44 grain outsert, which covers about 3/4 of an inch. We have the 54 grain, which covers just over an inch. And then we have the new post and sleeve system. You glue the post in, it's got threads on the end. So then the outsert screws onto the post and it's all glued on, and it is dynamite. Pretty happy with those.
Yeah. Now, let's say this price is for 6 arrows. Now is
Yes,
that
it is. And I
fletched
do
it
believe they're
fletched?
for fletched. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you sell them as just a raw shaft then as well?
We sure do. And for a dozen arrows, I would take off maybe 20, $25 off the book price for shafts. We also can build an arrow ready to shoot for somebody. All we really need is the arrow length or their draw length and the spine that they want. Local hunters and local shooters around here, sometimes I actually match the weight, and that's how I find a different arrow for them. Is we go through weights, I weigh their arrow down, I throw all the components of a new arrow, and I work it out. And I say, well, you know what, the micro ventilator, it's a heavier arrow, it'll will be like 6 grains, 8 grains off of your original arrow. So let's do that. And then you don't really have to change much.
Right. Now, let's say I order a six pack of arrows and next year I order another six pack of the same one. What would be the variation between those two packs?
Um, Weight wise, spine wise, identical. Um, you could, I'm telling you, I think the only difference would be how much glue you put on to glue your fletching or your outsert on. Honestly, we have had no issues with different, say, batches of arrows. I think the worst we had is one time we received a bunch of arrows that had the wrong logo on it, and so we had to get more arrows sent in. But with regards to people that are buying arrows every year or every other year in the same arrows, they just fall right into the new dozen and don't look back and have no issues.
Now, have you done any comparison between your arrows or shafts and some of the other manufacturers that make arrows?
Yes, we did. We did a gel test. It would have been back probably 8 years ago, and it's on the YouTube. The Boneyard TV is our YouTube channel for our hunting show. We did a gel test with a micro LT, a micro ventilator, and an Easton full metal jacket. And we shot, if I can remember correctly, we shot the micro ventilator first, and it went deep into the first gel. We had two gels side by side.
Right.
We shot the FMJ next. It was behind the micro ventilator, and then we shot the micro LT, and the micro LT went through the first gel and well into the second gel. So we were pretty darn happy with that.
Yeah.
But a guy has to remember when doing these tests, it has to be apples to apples. So you need the same
Right.
weight, right? And or the same tip, or, it has to be somewhat similar. And yeah, we were really happy with the results.
Yeah, I've been using the PSE's X-Weave, their Comp Pros, the 1000th shaft. That's all I
Oh yeah.
shoot. I don't shoot anything under 1000s just because I have seen the difference it makes, just the straightness. Um, I had there for a while, PSE come out with what they called their Hunter shaft, which is a 7000s.
Oh
And
yeah.
I got a dozen in dozen shafts in just so I could try them to see if they were worthwhile because they were a little bit cheaper, for beginner. Um, Now for a beginner, buying the 1000s probably a little bit out of the realm of what you need because your skill's not there anyway.
Right.
Um, but I set my broadheads up. I was able to shoot X's at 20 yards with my regular arrows. That, and that was my standard for setting an arrow up. Now, when I got the 7000s on there, I couldn't keep them in the X's, but I could keep them in the white. And
Okay.
that's the difference between 1 and 7000s. With the same shooter, same skill, and everything else, everything the same, except those shafts were heavier because
I got you.
they actually come in as a 400. Now, PSC did their spines different. One, two, three, four. Four being the stiffest spine, where everybody else does them kind of backwards from that. I think in this the spine indicate the deflection or something. I don't remember. I just know that the numbers increases it got stiffer where normally like on yours, the 600 would be a weaker spine than the 250,
That's
right?
right. That's
Yeah.
how we run it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's how everybody else does it except PSC. They did theirs differently. And I was supposed to be a 300 spine, but they actually come in a 400, which made they were heavier. So when I went to replace them with the other shafts, I had to put some weight tubes in to get the weight up the same because I didn't want to change all my
Right.
sights. I was have to change every pin on my sight. It's like it was 5 pin sights. So I'd have to go
Wow.
and reshoot every pin. So I just bumped the weight up, which for
Right.
hunting arrow isn't a bad thing, but um, you know, I've done that, and it's so much better. And one of the shooters I had for me, he was shooting, I think it was the Beemans, or he said something, a 3,000th arrow,
Right.
and he was consistently, you know in the white on the five, on the five spot, and just sit there. And I says, here, Jim, try these. I gave him some of mine I set up. Amazed how much tighter that group was.
Wow.
From about a 3 inch group down to a 1 inch group just by
Yeah,
changing from a 3 to a 1,000 straightness arrow. And that's why I don't hunt with the other ones, just because I want that tightest group as I can, because you got to judge
absolutely.
yardage. And if I'm off by 5 years on my judging, that's going to put me off by a little bit. And then if my arrow's got a bigger group, if you're a group in a 6 inch group at 20 yards, your effective range might be 10 or less,
Well,
you know?
absolutely. If you're a bow hunter that wants success, you want the right gear that's going to drive you in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Typically, I find as a arrow company, between a point one and a point three, most people can't shoot the difference.
Right.
The normal, but a person that shoots every day, he might just notice that they're just not grouping as tight those threes. So yeah, I'm one of those guys where I always need to have the best of the best, because I it's just a mental thing for me. I need to know that my setup is perfect. So if there's any problems, I know that it's me and not my setup.
Yeah. And there's a lot of archers out there that will only let certain techs touch their equipment because they
Yeah,
know them, they trust them, and they know they're going to be a good thing. And I've talked to a few archers that's like, I won't work on my own bow. I don't want nothing to do with it. Because they take it to somebody, because that eliminates one thing they have to think about. Okay,
that's right.
I'm not grouping. It's not the bow, because I don't have to question whether the bow is right, because I know that tech sets it up perfect every time. And now they just have to worry about what's wrong with their form. And
Yes.
that's something, but you know, I don't trust nobody else to work on my bows with me. So
Yeah, I hear you. I
because I
hear
know
you.
how high my standards are on making everything work. And um, it's just one of those things that, for me, because I've done that for many
Well, yeah,
years.
you don't want that in the back of your head that, this feels different. Like, what did he do to the bow? That why is it feeling different, or why is it shooting different? But if you do it yourself, you know exactly what you've done, and you know that you can always reverse it.
Right.
I
And you
have
know
a
how to look for those problems.
Well, that's right. I'm notorious for going to a tournament and shooting the first eight targets to the left, thinking that it's me, and then have my partner say, Jay, maybe you should click it a couple clicks. And then I click it, and then I'm shooting bang on again. I'm like, oh yeah, here I thought it was me. I always think it's me.
Yeah,
But
and it can be, and sometimes the equipment changes a little bit, as your strings get older and cables get older, they can stretch, or if it's hot out, it's cold
yeah,
out. That bow's going to shoot different when it's 95 degrees out. You're shooting outdoors as opposed to, 70 degrees shooting outside. It's
100%. Yep, for sure.
that's a, and then when you're hunting, where you're hunting up there in Canada, I'm down here in Nebraska, and we get out during hunting season. It could easily be freezing or below.
Yeah,
And they work completely different when they're basically frozen.
I hear you. I shot my first animal this year, my whitetail at 22 yards, and it was November 14th. So it was pretty chilly out. Um, well, actually, I killed a mule deer the last two, so it'd be October 29th, and it was still warm out, but it was starting to chill off a bit. But then I had a Saskatchewan hunt planned, and I killed my whitetail on the 14th, the day before I left, and it was getting pretty chilly. And you can sure tell, when you draw back your bow, it's not as loose. It's a stiffer pull, and you got to really concentrate on your muscles so you don't tear something, especially when you're getting up to our age.
Right. Yeah, and then too, it's cold, so you're a little stiffer too.
Yes, yeah. And I like to bow hunt all through the year. I'm also sponsored by Weatherby, so I like to shoot my guns too and stuff
Oh yeah.
such, right? But um taking an animal with a bow, as you know, is just it's just so special. It doesn't matter what you kill. If you can kill something with your bow that you're hunting, it's just unbelievably a great experience and a great accomplishment.
Right. You got to get so much closer.
You
I've
really,
killed.
yes, you really, really need to know how to hunt. Um, and it really teaches you how to hunt. I was a little late to get on the bow train. I would think I was about 30 years old. But the lucky thing that I had is that I always hunted with a rifle like I had a bow in my hand. I rattled deer in, I hunted scrapes and rubs, and whenever I shot a deer when I was younger, it was way under 100 yards. So I was already killing animals up close just with a rifle. So then when I got my first bow, it was just so natural that I just keep hunting the same way. So I did myself a lot of good in wanting to hunt the hard way, the real way, to be a hunter, not say drive around in the truck and shoot out of the window and hunt at night and break the law. I always did things the right way and the hardest way to prove to myself that as a hunter, I'm going to do it and I'm going to succeed. And it just turns out I succeed quite a bit every year. I do a pretty good job, and I'm pretty proud of my accomplishments.
Well, I had one guy I run to. He was doing a lot of hunting, trying to get all the North American big game, with
Right.
his bow. And he said once time somebody asked him, "What's the difference between a bow hunter and a rifle hunter?" His response was the time you spend with the animal. Because pre-trip you have to plan your hunting, and then after you kill the animal, it's the same work no matter how you killed it. But with a rifle, you see that animal that you're gonna, that's your target, and you're 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards. You just pull up, shoot, hunts over. Well,
Yep.
bow hunting, your hunt's just starting. You got to get 20, 30, 40, maybe on like an elk size animal. Maybe you can do it at 50. Um,
Yep.
but now you might spend all week hunting. Where at the rifle, you might spend all morning.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the difference. But the goal is to get meat in the freezer.
Absolutely, man.
So
Yes.
how you kill it makes no difference, except us archers, we prefer to do it with a bow and arrow.
Yeah. And you can say I want to hunt with a bow, and that doesn't mean you got to hunt one specific way. There's tree stands, there's ground blinds, there's spot and stalk, just like with a rifle. You just got to be quieter. You got to pay more attention to the wind. You got to we have a wonderful app up here called iHunter, and iHunter is just like Onyx, but it has changed the way I hunt. Like if I go into an area, I look at the iHunter and I pretty much can pinpoint. I drop my own pins on good terrain, and I that's how I always start before I go in. I check the wind. I go, okay, I want to get to these 3 points, but the wind is blowing northwest, so I got to start on this corner and I'm going to work my way in. And it has done wonderful things for me. Um, it comes down to the camo you're wearing too, and how quiet you're going to be, and yeah, and it comes down to what arrows are you shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, I've seen, you know, archers trying to use mechanicals, and that they might go in 2 or 3 inches at most. They're not shooting that heavyweight. They're shooting, trying to take this big hole and do a lot of big cutting in there, and I'm just not that fond of mechanicals on the lower weight draws.
Right.
Um, I still shoot a Muzzy. That was my very first broadhead many decades ago, and I still shoot the 100 grain Muzzy. I started off with a 4 blade, and now I've been using a 3 blade for probably 3 or 4 decades, something like
Right.
that. Um,
Right.
but you got to have trust in your broadhead. I know that
You do.
Muzzy blade is good. I have hit bones and shattered bones. In fact, one time when I had my store, I was shooting after I got done for the day, which probably should have been doing it, but I missed target. I had my broadhead target out because I don't shoot broadheads at regular target because it tears them up. And I missed, and I hit the concrete block. It cracked the
Oop.
insert, broke the shaft back about an inch. The broadhead sticking in the concrete block. I don't know which one it is because I pulled it out and it didn't even hurt the broadhead. It stuck
Wow.
into a concrete block
Isn't
and
that
did not
something?
hurt the broadhead.
Wow.
And
Hey.
I've hit thigh bones and everything else and just shattered them and still passed through deer, and it's a tough point and tough broadhead and easy to put together. 3 blades are easy to put together, and I can do it pretty much in the dark, and well, because I've assembled them so many times. But
Yeah.
and then they have all these mechanicals out there, and I just was never really fond of. And I shoot 70 pounds. I
Oh,
was
you
shooting
do.
70 pounds.
Yeah.
So I had plenty of weight to go to a mechanical, but I just prefer to. Now, those are shooting the real fast bows. You can't shoot fixed blades. They're just too hard to control. You can't
Right.
because they're so fast. At some point, your arrow is so fast that broadhead, you can't tune them.
Right.
It's really hard. Now, I'm not shooting that fast. So my bow is rated at 320, but I'm not shooting
Okay.
anywhere close to that. I've got a 2001 PSE Carrera. It was rated at 320 feet per second,
Uh-huh.
but I'm shooting like 280 or somewhere right in that range. Um, well, I got those heavier hunter arrows, so they're heavier than normal because my normal
Okay.
shafts are about 350, 365 grains, the regular ones that I should be shooting. So these are a lot heavier, which slows it
Okay.
down. And then I put string leeches on my strings and my cables, quiet it down. So
That
those
slows
bows
it down.
were not the quietest bows.
Right.
So I got stuff on there to quiet it down and everything else. So I don't care about speed as long as it's not like moving at 100 feet per second.
Right.
Anything better than that, because I get plenty, and I get I'll pass through deer all the time. And in fact, I was shooting a 2117 arrow with a 145 grain tip, I think it was, or 125. That was many, many years ago. At 52 pounds, it was a full length arrow. Now, I don't know
Oh
what those
yeah.
weigh, but those were heavy. I was 20 feet up in a tree because I'd get that far to get over the bushes to get to the trail. And I shot this deer. And as it turned around, I seen almost all the arrow hanging out the backside of it. I think the fletching stopped it from coming out.
Oh,
And
probably.
that was at 52 pounds with a heavy arrow with a Muzzy broadhead on. I think it was a 4 blade at that time, 125 4 blade. But um, yeah, you don't stop that mass.
No, no,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, you
right.
don't stop that mass. It's the light arrows are nice and fast, but they hit bones, they start slowing down really quick and just going through
Yeah.
the hide, and that's why I'm not real fond of the mechanicals, because as we're shooting at an angle, you got to open up the one blade, which then turns it a little bit more than you would with a fixed blade, and now you're taking a lot of that energy out of it as it's going through that height at an angle, and
Yeah.
it's not really
I'm
soft.
I'm a big I think my number one animal to hunt is a mule deer. So up here in Alberta, it's hard because typically they live in the coulees and the grassland, right? So it's hard to get close. So you got to launch arrows. And I've been using a Rage mechanical for probably 18 years, for quite a while. And I started using them just because they fly. They're so easy to tune and they
Yeah,
fly so good to a field point. And I have never had any issues, Roy, with my
yeah,
rages. I mean, I blow through stuff. I kill moose and elk with them. I just believe, you gotta aim for the vitals. You gotta hit the
right.
vitals. But if I miss and I hit like a liver or just a paunch shot, that 2 inch cut is just so devastating that if you make a poor shot, you want the most devastation.
Right.
And I've
Yeah.
shot fixed blades and I've had lots of luck. I think the last time I shot a fixed blade, I made a bad shot on an elk, and it was a G5 Montec, and I shot it square in the shoulder, and it actually bent the tip over. Like it
Oh,
absolutely destroyed the Montec. So I just, you know what, I'm gonna try something else. But I also made a real effort not to hit that scapula anymore too,
yeah.
because that's like a brick.
Yeah, yeah. I've hit it with my muzzies, and it basically just bounced off. That one spot on
Right.
that shoulder, if you hit it, it won't penetrate. And I shot it about 10 yards, 70 pounds, and it didn't penetrate it.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
and
Hey.
and any place else, the regular shoulder blade, it blows through them, everything else. And yeah, it's a lot of it's shot placement, but
Yeah.
then you have to deal with how far are your shots. That's something else you have to think about too.
Absolutely.
Um, I shoot 4-inch feathers. Um, so initially they're faster, but they slow down a little quicker. And, because the more drag in over the veins.
Yep.
And so I don't take those really long shots. I'll practice it when I'm practicing just because it makes
Yeah.
the shorter ones more accurate. But I don't take those long ones. So if I was routinely going to have to be taking 50-yard shots or 60-yard shots, because that's what we're going to have to do, then I might think about going to, like one of the mechanicals that are actually,
Right.
pretty decent in flying because you can get them to fly a little better. The way I tune mine is I adjust the fletching and the blades to be aligned, and then you
Right.
can kind of tweak it to direct that broadhead into the X ring. You can tweak it, little tighten it up, loosen up a little bit. There's a little bit of fine tuning in there that you can adjust. I have what they call a U-bar, which is a cone-shaped washer, then an O-ring that I put on them. And then once I get it adjusted where it's supposed to be, then I'll put like a little, white, um, like fingernail polish type of stuff on there, white out or something. So I always see where that's lined up.
Right.
And, when you start getting that longer range, now you got to start testing with that long range because now you got to tweak a little bit more, and that's where, like I say, you take some of those longer shots, on mule deer, which you pretty much have to, because they
Yeah.
don't, you don't, you don't pattern muleys like you do whitetail.
Hell no.
They just kind of roam around wherever. So you're going to have those longer shots. And, if I was trying to do those longer shots, I'd probably switch to one of the, um, one of the little more tougher and easier to use
Hmm.
mechanicals,
Right.
just because I don't take those long shots and I don't need that distance. So I don't really bother with it. And then too, shooting feathers, difference between feathers and veins, for those that might know, a feather is lighter than a vein. Now, there's more drag in a feather than there's a vein. So initially, the arrow is going to be faster, but at some point, the vein is going to maintain its speed longer because it doesn't have as much drag.
Right.
So longer shots, shooting veins might be, an advantage, but I'm old school. I started shooting in the 60s. So I started when you had your choice of feathers, wood shafts, aluminum shafts, or fiberglass shafts for bow fishing. And your
Right.
choices was wood or fiberglass recurves or longbows.
Oh,
They
yeah.
didn't have crossbows or compounds at that time. Those didn't come into I think the late 60s was the first design of one, but it wasn't until the mid 70s where there's even really, you could even buy them.
Right. And then carbon came behind that.
Yeah. And I remember the first carbons come out, they were all straight grain fibers from the tip to tip, all straight
Okay.
line. And I seen those. There's no way I'd even shoot one. I wouldn't even shoot on my bow. I was like, I had nothing to do with them. Because if you break one, you have little carbon fibers just shattered all over. So you can get
Yeah.
them into your hands and everything else.
Yeah.
There's no way I
Nasty.
would shoot those in an amble. And then they come with the cross weave shafts, and that made them a little tougher. And then, the PSC come out with the X weave. I was a PSC dealer for a few years back in early
Yeah.
2000s. Um, and then now that it's so much better, and when one of those shafts would break, they'd break clean. I was like, okay, I can get on board with carbons at this point. Uh,
You're right.
yeah, the best aluminum you could get at the time was a point, 0015 thousandths, and that was the double X 78s. And now with the carbons, you get them into 1 thousandths even straighter. But
Yeah.
what I found, even though it's not quite as straight, you shoot your aluminum shafts, and next year your groups have gotten so big, you get a new set, and all of a sudden your groups just tighten right up because you've been
Hmm.
smacking them together for a year. And also, what does an arrow do when you shoot it? It flexes.
It does.
How would you break a piece of aluminum? Flex it, flex it, flex it, keep flexing it. Next time it gets weak and breaks. What are you doing to that aluminum shaft? You're flexing it every shot. So after you shoot it for a whole
Absolutely.
year, this tolerances are going to go out, and then you get a new
Yeah.
set, and then you're back. Well, carbons, yeah, I would shoot a carbon until it broke or cracked or anything.
Absolutely. You hit something hard, all you have to do is just flex it and check it and make sure that it's not going to break. Because if the shaft is compromised, you're going to break it right there and then and no, right?
Right?
Arrows definitely don't like that side impact. It doesn't matter what arrow you have, you hit it on the side, or if it gets, smacked or something, that's how it's going to break 9 times out of
Yeah.
10.
Well, an arrow that I shot in concrete block, it only cracked back maybe an inch and a half
Mm-hmm.
from hitting into the concrete block. And
Right.
so I went back past that a little bit, cut it down, and my son let him shoot it. He's shooting a little small bow, so he didn't have anything powerful enough to really hurt it. And
Right.
that way,
Right.
give him an arrow to go fling, and hits it at the range, and he'd shoot for hours. He'd shoot like 3 or 4 dozen arrows that I had set up for him, and then go pull them on and shoot them again, and pull them on, shoot them again.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I try to go out every other day at least, and shoot. Now that it's starting to warm up, I think the outdoor range is going to be open, and it's out to 80 yards. So I really like shooting 70 and 40, and I'll just shoot that over and over and over, and then I'll change it up every once in a while. But just all for those mule deer, those elusive mule deer. I need to be able to reach out there for them, but um, yeah, I just can't wait. Bear season is actually starting up here. What's the date today? I think it just opened up, so I'm going to be heading out and baiting. And I'm actually, what I'm going to do, Roy, is I'm going to try a fixed blade. Um, it's a blade out of Mexico, and I'm not sure if I can pronounce it right. I'm not even going to say the name because I don't really know how it's pronounced, but it's Mexico's first and only broadhead. And I wish I had a pack here, I'd show you, but I'm going to try it on a bear because I know it's going to be probably a 20-25 yard shot. And it is a solid single beveled broadhead. And yeah, I think it looks pretty
Is it
deadly to me.
is it TOULOU?
It's like a Germania. It's an orange broadhead.
Oh no, that's this one. It almost looks like a pointed shovel. on the broadhead on this one.
No, this is just a single beveled orange broadhead. It starts with a G. It's Germania, I think, something like that. But they approached me to, I guess, should I get into this story? I went down to Mexico here. I just got back. Um, it was the adventure of a lifetime, I'll tell you. It was how it started is I was invited down to Mexico's first annual IBO 3D Latin Championship. I was the only white guy there, other than my good friend Dane Percival, who I brought down with me. But it's all through my good friend David Namirez with Kong 3D. He's got a probably one of the most realistic 3D targets I've ever seen. He had water buffalo, Cape buffalo, hippos, you name it, he's got it. He's coming out with a rhino and an elephant here soon. But anyways, it started out with me being invited down to this archery shoot. And then it morphed into something really huge. I ended up working with Candela Tourism. Now, Candela is a little town south of Laredo. It's in the desert, just a beautiful town. Um, Tons of history, lots of wars with indigenous, with Spanish. Anyways, I so when I flew into Monterey, I ended up going to Candela for a day or two and hanging out with the mayor of Candela and the historian and some great people. And I documented the town, all the highlights, some of the they have thermal pools, they have majestic mountains and valleys, and it's just a wonderful place. So I did that, and in turn, tourism Candela and the mayor gave me a free aoudad hunt in the mountains of Candela. So after spending a day and a half there documenting the town, I continued on to a ranch called Don Pedro Ranch. Just a wonderful ranch, a big estate. They have a ton of land, and then in the middle of their property, they have 1,000-acre high fenced exotic farm or ranch. So, and that's where the actual hacienda is. So we stayed in this exotic ranch with black buck and fallow deer eating on the front lawn and stuff, and went hunting aoudad up in the mountains, and it was unbelievable. It was in the 90s, so extremely hot, gusty wind. It was like a hair dryer in your face all day. It was just blowing hot air on you. But I ended up taking a ram with my bow, and I realized what an accomplishment that is, because they are like a whitetail times 10 on how scared and like, I mean, I've never seen an animal that was always on guard like they were. One would twitch, the other 10 would start running, and they were just so skittish and scared of absolutely everything. So it was quite the hunt. I ended up taking a ram at 33 yards. And from there, we drove 10 hours south to Querétaro, which is just north of Mexico City. And there I competed in the first annual Latin Cup. And I was amazed at the reception, Roy. I was like, I ended up taking a third day medal. The way that the shoot worked, it was a 3 day shoot, but it was like three tournaments in one. So day one, you shoot first, second, third at the end of the day in your category. Day two, the same, you shoot first, second, third. Day three, you shoot first, second, third, but then you accumulate your top two scores of the weekend, and then it's the overall first, second, and third for the big trophies, right? It was a great setup, and I ended up taking a third day bronze. And my partner Dane, who is a Killin Stick pro staff, he ended up taking the weekend in his category. So he ended up with a big trophy, and the targets were awesome. They were hard to shoot. And IBO, right? It's no unknown yardage, so very tricky. But the people that I met down there were so fascinating. And now I have multiple gentlemen down there that are networking and marketing my arrows. So I'm making big strides down in Mexico with Killin Stick's brand, and I'm going to keep going back. You know, you have to stay relevant. You can't just show up
Right.
once and not go back. It's like doing a trade show, Roy. Um, I do a lot of trade shows, and you gotta do at least three or four in a row before you start really meeting people and networking and getting ahead, so to speak. So next year I will be going back to the second annual Latin Cup, and just moving forward with my arrow brand. I am actually. It's just been a wonderful couple of months because I've already been offered another free hunt with Don Pedro Ranch. So I'm trying to go back in August to do it again and try to get a big bugger this time. And then I will make plans to go back probably in March again of next year to do the archery shoot again. Love it. It's just so much fun.
Oh yeah, that's uh you never know who you're going to run into.
No, that's right. That is right. And it's sort of funny because I show some of the clips that I do while I'm hunting, and I was showing a javelina that I had shot a couple of years prior on a hunt in Mexico, and it sort of went viral a couple times. And the guys at the outfit at Don Pedro, they was like, "What? I've seen this before. That's you." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
It was pretty neat for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of when you go somewhere and it's like, oh, that's you?
Yeah, it's like, wow, unbelievable, you know. But social media, you know, it can work wonders, you know, and getting
Yeah,
your brand out there and getting your name out there.
you never know who's going to watch your videos.
Well,
And
that's right. That's right. Always
you know,
keep an open mind and keep pushing forward.
well, and I got all kinds of videos on my channel. My channel is Learn to Fix It Yourself, and I have the podcast goes out there, as well as archery videos that I do. If I do any hunting videos, I'll do some of those. Yeah, I'm working on cars. I put those out there.
Oh yeah, right on.
I'm doing welding projects. I put those out there. I'm in the process of recording one where we're leveling out and put footings in to move a shed. That's what I'm working
Yeah.
on now, and then I've got some accident ones that I'm doing and repairs, car repairs, and just you never know. And I got over 1,100 videos, and I'm still working on my 1,000 subscribers. I
Wow.
think
Hey.
last time I looked like 943, I think now.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you want to get some cool stuff, you subscribe to my channel, and you never know what I'm going to upload next. It
No,
might
that's
be
right.
something you like and something you don't, and then I go through and I split the videos up and send them out. You've seen some of those Opus clips where they'll just
Yeah.
take a video and split it in multiple ones.
Yeah.
I've done that, and sometimes you get some good views on them, sometimes not, and you know I got a couple of real good ones I did. I interviewed the developer of WTF Camo, Whitetail Forensic Camo, and
Okay.
so here's some of his stories of his camos, completely different than anything else you've seen. And he's talking about where some of the people they've been standing there, and the deer just come walking up to them. They don't know what they are. They can't see them.
Is it
Uh,
sort of like a hex system where it's sort
no,
of
no.
it's just the
Um,
camel?
Yeah, it's a camel pattern that is completely different in design. It's got more like looks more like longer branches and stuff in there. Not
Yeah.
like the old I forget what the camel was called that looked like a tree bark camel. It's completely different than that. And when you see them in the background, they just kind of disappear, and it's
Oh yeah.
amazing some of the stuff you go and I talked to Broadhead Company that had all kinds of different broadheads, and um, I talked to one guy who's an engineer. He's done a whole lot of analysis and stuff, and there's just so many different things you can do to your bow, and everything's just kind of cool what you can do, and talking to guys like you that come up with a different shaft. It's really cool. Um, I probably won't need any for a while because when I closed my store, I kept all my Count Pro
Oh,
300s. So
there you go.
I've got enough to probably last me a lifetime. So,
Right. Oh,
but
good.
it's always nice to know, how does like my Comp Pro X Weave, from PSE, how does that compare to your arrows? Because now you got to remember this is 20 years ago compared to what we have now.
Right.
And, that'd be something it's like, okay, how does this shaft compare to which one's yours? And
Yeah.
then kind of see, okay, I know this shaft pretty well and I've had good luck with it, but I'm shooting 70 pounds too. So that helps.
Yeah.
May not now, I may have to drop down because some other things going on, but, um, yeah, it's always interesting to see, compare yours to kind of a standard that a lot of people are familiar with, and you can see, okay, this one did better, this one did really better than, so you can kind of see, if you're looking for penetration, which when we're hunting, that's what we want. We want it to pass through because it gives us
Yes.
two holes instead of one.
That's right.
Um, so yeah, that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
now
It's amazing.
I do have your
Sorry.
YouTube. I do have your YouTube channel page open if you wanted to kind of go over some of those videos.
Well, I'll tell you this year is going to be unbelievable. I did so good this year, Roy. I started out. I killed a mule deer at 68 yards with my bow. I then killed my whitetail 22 yards with my bow. I killed a black bear with my bow earlier in March. So that's three animals. I went to Saskatchewan and I harvested two whitetail with a rifle. And then I went to Mexico and got my aoudad with my bow. So I have 6 kills. And I film. A lot of people don't know this about me, but on the boneyard, I self film everything. So I have 6 kill shots that I filmed on 6 animals that I killed this year. So it was a banner year for me.
Yeah,
We are just starting our editing process. My partner's computer actually died on him, and it took him a month and a half, but to get all the parts in. So we're running a little behind, but I'm going to start it with our 2-part Mexico experience, and I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to do day for day, day one hunting and day one at the archery shoot, and mix it in together, and then go day two, day three, and it should be really exciting. I haven't been this excited about doing an episode in a long time, but this is going to be a real good one. On our YouTube page, we have something like 180 videos and clips. Like I said, we've been in the business for 17 years. So we have 17 years of footage on our YouTube page. Anything from deer, elk, moose, cougar. I mean, we do it all. So there's always something there to keep somebody entertained. And that's the
yeah,
great thing about YouTube is that you don't have to set your timer or get up at 3 in the morning to watch your episode that's on Pursuit Channel or the Sportsman's Channel. You can just sit down and watch one after the other, and you can watch them all. So that's what I like about YouTube. And that's really what drew us to YouTube, is that we don't have to pay to be on TV now. We get paid to be on YouTube, which is great.
yeah, yeah. Once you get that 1,000 subscribers, then they'll start paying you.
Yeah, once it's
That's why
monetized, yeah.
I'm working on that. It's been a while, but I'm working on that. And you can go out and you can pay these services that will get you the subscribers and comments and stuff. And but
Right.
I never wanted to do that because I wanted to be, people that are really interested in it and want to subscribe. And of
Yeah.
course, anybody wants to help out, go out to learn to fix it yourself, and subscribe. It's also, you can look out for Roy Canterbury on YouTube. That's my name, so you can find it there. But I like to learn to
Okay.
fix it yourself. And get
Absolutely.
subscribers out there and do that and help the channel out. And it's really good. What I'll do is in the description, I'll leave a link to your YouTube channel as well as your Killin Stix website. I'll leave a link to that so anybody's going through the description can just click on the link and get right there to it.
Okay.
Um,
Awesome.
so it
Awesome.
makes it a little bit easier getting to there. That's kind of what I do. I like to offer, you know, whatever I can to the archers and get links. Because if we talk about it, last thing I do is like, I'm where was that link? And go back, okay, try and write it down. No, I'm just gonna leave it in the description.
Yeah. No, that's the
Yeah,
best way to do it.
and I was just
Sure.
thinking, what would I would do if I wanted to, okay, the killing stick sounds really interesting. I need some shafts. No, what was that? What was it?
Uh-huh.
Or worse yet, it's like, what was the name of those arrows that you're talking about? And can't remember. It's like, okay, it's all here.
Yeah. It's all right here. Yeah.
Make it a little
Absolutely.
easier, and that's just kind of the fun part of this is you can leave it out there, and I don't get anything out of it, but I don't care. And it's like, if it helps somebody out, that's the goal. The videos is, can I help you out? I've had
Well,
people come in and
absolutely. And you enjoy what you're doing, and that's the bottom line, you know. I too, I want people to realize that carbon, just like bows, have come a long way. And
yeah,
not all carbon is the same. And you can get a real cheap carbon from a bad factory, or you can get a really good arrow from a good factory. You just have to dig. Like
yeah,
it took us probably 5 factories to find the one that we're have been dealing with for the last say 8 years. And we're not. We actually, a quick story before we go, Roy, is we went to our first ATA show probably 9 years ago. And while we were there, um, Victory Arrows kept coming by to check our stuff out. And at first, it was just a couple salesmen, and then they brought their carbon maker from Japan, Mr. Mitsubishi, was there, and he looked at our arrows, and then they left, and then the salesman came back. He goes, "You know what? We could sue you for your carbon technology," and we're just like, "What?" But then at the end of the weekend, they came back and said, "Hey, listen, we love everything you're doing. We love your name. We love your packaging. Your arrows are great. We would love to build or make your arrows for you." And we turned them down because we weren't. It wasn't guaranteed that Victory's arrows were as good as the arrows we were getting from our factory. And I still believe that we made the right choice. That Victory doesn't have the technology that our arrows do. And it's been a slow climb for us. Canada's a pretty small country, but we're making strides in the U.S. And now, like I said, Mexico has opened the doors for us. So I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see a big increase in arrow sales for us.
yeah. Now, where are your arrows made now?
They are in a factory in China.
Okay.
Um, and there are a couple other high end arrows that are coming out of there. So I know that they're good.
I know that the story I was hearing, when PSE come up with their design for their arrows, they went to a lot of manufacturers and none of them could meet their standards. They actually went to an aerospace company
Oh,
that
yeah.
had higher standards to actually get the shafts made to their standards.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
all the other aero manufacturers making carbons couldn't meet their standards. And when you go to an aerospace company that's designed to make carbon fiber stuff for aircrafts, um, yeah, you're getting a good quality shaft. And
Yeah.
I've always had good luck with them, and I
Yeah.
sold thousands of them when I had my
Yeah.
store,
Yeah. Well,
and I
there you
pledged
go. Right.
thousands of them too. because
Yeah.
I ordered in shafts, and then I had 4 and 5 inch feathers. I had, 2, 3, and 4 inch, mostly 3 and 4 inch veins, and you come in and it's like, okay, whichever spine you needed, and what do you want for color for your fletching? You want veins, you want feathers, you want 3 inch or
Mm-hmm.
4 inch or 5 inch, and then
Yeah.
custom make them. Now you go buy, Cabela's, any place like that. They're already fletched with their selection of colors. A lot of times oranges and whites, and sometimes some yellows and mixed in there. And everybody's arrow looks the same, identical. There's
Yeah.
no difference in them. So if
Yeah.
you go to tournaments, you got like, well, if you're going to tournaments and shooting one arrows, it better be your very first bow that you're just getting, because their arrows are not very good. But I actually showed one time I had a good quality arrow that was Robin Hooded, and a cheap one Robin Hooded. And it's amazing how much further that arrow penetrated down in that shaft on that cheap one. And I've gotten some in, 70 pounds at 20 yards, only going in maybe 3, 4 inches.
Oh yeah.
Is how further it went in. And that's at 70 pounds.
Wow.
At
Wow.
20 yards at 70 pounds, as opposed to some of the cheap ones, I'd split it clear to the tip probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
But,
Split it right
that's,
down.
like yours, it's a tough shaft. If you do stick an arrow in the back of it, it's going to stand up much better because of the quality of the shafts. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you're not going to have trouble with them breaking when you're shooting.
I, I I'd like I want people to know that you can that by going to a big box store like a Cabela's isn't always that there's better out there if they do their homework. And I'm not knocking, there's good arrows there, but there is a difference in the carbon, and there is a difference between not all arrows are the same. And I hope
Right.
people understand that. It's just like your bow, just like your broadhead. There is differences, and you need to do your homework, and you need to get out there and start testing.
Yeah. And it all depends too. A very new shooter. I wouldn't recommend them getting, um, buying the 1,000 straight in the shafts. It's your very first bow.
Yeah,
Unless you have proper instruction, which I give all my new archers, you're lucky probably at 20 yards to have a 6 inch group. If you were
yeah,
6 inches and just starting out without any instruction, what good would it do to have 1,000 straight in the shafts when you can't group in close and know the difference? So buy the
yeah,
cheaper ones, and then as you get better and better, and of course now when I taught my archers, they had a lot better groups than that. In fact, one guy he didn't want to buy. He had a PhD, so he had the money. He didn't want to buy a low end bow. He's bought a high end bow. Taught him how to shoot. 2 weeks later, he comes back and shows me Robin Hood he got already.
oh
Been shooting
really?
for 2 weeks experience shooting a bow, and he's getting a Robin Hood. It's like,
Wow, that's
well, it's
awesome.
because somebody knows what to do and taught him how to shoot.
Yeah. Hey, that's a feather in your cap.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and I've done that, several times. Had one guy come in, and he was probably grouping at 20 yards. He's probably grouping, I'd say probably 6 inches is all better he could group. 45 minutes later, he's walking out with 1 inch groups.
Wow.
Well, one, his draw length was way too long, and he
Oh
was
yeah.
pulling the trigger, which is another thing that's wrong. You can't pull the trigger on with a
Right.
mechanical release. I always tell archers when I fight, "You shoot a release, yeah. I'll give you first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger." They say, "Huh? What? How do you know?" It's like, I've been doing this a long time. I know you're pulling the
Yeah.
trigger. The funny
Oh
ones is
yeah.
when I see the TV hunters, that finger is sticking right out as far as hard as you can, and then they just cram on that trigger.
Bam. Ah,
Like I could tell by look at their hand that they're gonna cram on that trigger. And you
yeah.
see a lot of videos of people shooting, and it's like, okay, they're gonna slam on that trigger. Sure enough, boom, they just slam on that trigger. I can tell by the way their hand is, just by the
Yeah.
way your hand's sitting. If that finger's out, you're gonna pull on the trigger. The hand's got to be curled over because it's
Yeah.
you put it back, from your hand going out to the first knuckle, not the second one away from the tip. That's you put the trigger, and you don't pull the trigger, you just pull back.
That's all
Squeeze
you
them
have to
shoulder
do.
blades together, and it goes off. First time
Yeah.
I heard of that, it's like, what? How do you know when you're going to shoot? Well, the key is you aim and aim and aim and aim, and it eventually goes
And it
off.
goes off. Yeah.
Once I learned it, it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. And then of course, being 20 years of martial arts, I kind of combined in a lot of the stuff into my teaching, and just in the position the bow goes in your hand.
Yeah.
I'll ask them if you have any martial arts experience, and if they say no, then I just go on to something else. Otherwise, I say, hey, think of a heel palm strike. Now, those that don't know, the heel palm strike, you got your thumb, the pad on your thumb, and the pad on your little finger. The heel palm strike is in between the hard part of the bone, which is connected clear back through your elbow and to your shoulder. So if you
Right.
take somebody, hold it out, and you push on that part, you feel it clear back in the shoulder. But if you push on the mat on the thumb, it twists your hand, and you feel it more in the elbow. The wrist and the elbow is where you feel it. So as your hand is turning either one away, and that's not consistent. And in there for a while, there's a thing, everybody used a high wrist with the wrist really pointed out. And there it's like, that never worked for me. And now I go there and do that. And I teach a really closed stance, real closed. I'm trying to teach open. Well, the problem with an open stance is as you go off, your hands are forward, and you have to be pushing back towards an open stance in order to hold the bow. Otherwise, it'll collapse on you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when you shoot, that hand goes out towards your back. It
Right.
goes away from where it's at. So now you're pulling that bow every time you shoot. You're pulling. Well, if you shoot a completely closed stance, then that hand pushes straight to your target. So as we're shooting, it goes straight to your target,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the most efficient and most consistent. Now,
Absolutely.
if you're holding the bow wrong, if you grip it like a baseball bat, you will hit your arm.
Or fingers straight out. That drives me
Yeah, or
crazy.
finger straight out. Just
You're
just
tense.
stand. Yeah, stand with your hand on the side. Just relax it down there, and that hand position is kind. Well, you probably can't see it too well on the camera, but it's completely relaxed. Your fingers are
Yeah.
closed. I see some that's trying to stretch. Well, feel
Ah.
the tension in your hand. Straighten that hand out. It's tension,
Oh,
and
for
then the
sure.
shape's just a little bit changes. But if it's completely relaxed, nothing you do changes it. So
Yep.
that's why
That
all
torque
my
is,
bows had slings.
yeah, the torque is bad, and a lot of people don't know why they're shooting right or left, but it's that lead hand,
Yep.
you gotta relax it. As hard as it is when you first start out shooting a bow, you think you're gonna drop the bow or the bow's gonna fly out of your hand, but you gotta relax that.
Well, and I put slings on all my bows, and I always
Oh yeah.
recommended slings. Now those you'll see a lot of the Olympic archers don't use a sling, but they have a finger that goes around a thumb and finger, so there's a
Yeah.
string on, so it can't fall.
Yeah.
If I'm in my tree stand and I don't have my sling on, and I shoot, my bow's on the ground because I don't hang
Oh,
on
is
to it.
it? Oh yeah.
It'd be on the ground if I don't have a sling. And one time, I was out working on a bow, and it was an older one. It didn't have a sling on it, and I'm not thinking, and I shoot, and I feel it come hit my fingers like, oh yeah. Hey, I had to grab it. It didn't hit the ground, fortunately, but I did have to grab it after I shot, and it's like, oh, I forgot about that because I'm just so used to not hanging on to it.
I started out using a sling and I don't anymore. And I don't know why I don't. I don't know how that transpired. It's just I don't seem to need it. Um, so I haven't dropped my bow yet.
Well, now you got to remember when I started doing this, the limbs were pretty much straight up and down. So as you draw the bow back, the limbs come back, and then when you shoot, they go back forward.
Okay.
So the bow is being pushed forward away from your hand.
Right.
Now with the parallel limbs, you're pulling down, so now the force is straight up and straight down. So it doesn't make that bow want to jump forward. So it's the angle of the force when you shoot, which way the limbs move. And at the
Oh yeah.
parallel design and beyond parallel, they move basically straight up and straight down, which counters it out. Where the
Right.
older bows, the force was going forward. So you have the
Right.
both limbs going forward, which pushes that bow forward and out of your hand.
It wants to jump right out of your hand.
Like a
Oh,
recurve, a longbows. They're
right.
they're real tall, and all that force is going forward. Where on the
Yeah.
compound, the
Good
newer
point.
ones, they go up and down. That's just a little difference in the way the forces are acting on that after you shoot that bow.
Right. Right. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
I've got a lot of that. Um, I, I took the videos from my course and I put them on my YouTube channel, so you can actually watch all the videos from my on my YouTube channel. Just go out and look at the playlist for shooting form, and all the videos that I add, for teaching. I put all those out there just
Oh,
just to
excellent.
have them out there, and I become an arch instructor in '95, so I've taught a few people how to shoot, and
I
you
bet.
know, it, you know, if anybody has any questions, get a hold of me. And if anybody has any questions on your shafts or your YouTube channel, definitely get a hold of you, because I'm sure if you're like me, you'd be glad to answer any questions. Um,
Absolutely. I'm an open book, and I look forward to people asking me questions because I will never shy away from anything. And if I don't know it, I'll if I don't know the answer, I'll definitely look it up or find an answer for them for sure.
yeah, it's
And that's being in this business. You have to be open to talk to people and help them with their problems. It's just part of the business. Um, it helps you gain more of a following when you're an open book and willing to talk with anybody.
yeah, and it's just a lot of fun kind of help people out, and
Yeah.
the coolest part is when you have a new archer that shoots it. I've had a few lots of times it's ladies come with their husband, they shoot, and I always ask, was like, well, you want to shoot? I'll just shoot one arrow, set it up, and they shoot one arrow. It's like, whoa, that's fun. Can I do it again? You bet you can do it again. And you do
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
They don't realize it. And then the other part is when you're teaching somebody, they're terrible form, and nothing's working right, and you go through and you're teaching them everything, you go in, and all of a sudden you see that little light click, and it's like, oh, that's what you've been telling me. And when I'm teaching, I teach everybody exactly the same way, and then I modify it to work for them.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to teach you the way I shoot, what worked good for me, and then we're going to have to adjust it, because I could teach you the same thing I'm doing. It may or may not work good for you. Lots of times it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Um, there's I It's a lot easier now with the videos, because I can go back and I can bring it into. I use DaVinci Resolve, and I can do frame at a time through there. That's how I
Oh,
use to
wow.
create my videos, is with that program, and I can go
Oh,
through
cool.
frame at a time, and I can see exactly what's doing. When I first started, I'm watching it live. I have no replay. You know,
Right.
I could have brought in a VCR recorder and recorded it there and played it back, but you can't. At that time there was one of the players that you could do frame advance, but no, you're playing them back and reverse forward and see them. It's like it's so much easier now, and and,
Oh,
and
for
you can
sure.
teach. We could get on a Zoom call together, and I could teach you right. Just like right now. Because basic stuff, and go through. Watch a couple of videos. It's like, here's what I'm going to teach you, and work through it, and let's
Yeah.
get in and let's do it, and send videos back and forth, and
Yeah,
it's
for
just so
sure.
much easier. Yeah,
Yeah.
my first online student was in Italy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
he didn't have an instructor over there anywhere close to him, and I says, hey, this is when I was thinking about putting together an online archery course, and I wanted to see how it's going to work. So I says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to help you for free, no charge. We're just going to go through this, kind of work on any bugs, see if it's viable to do that. And so he'd send me videos, I'd watch them, give back suggestions, give back and forth, and he's getting better and better. And the second guy I did was actually in Canada. I got on the call with him. It was only about 45-minute call. We was there for an hour, but it took a few minutes to get everything all set up. But
Right.
about 45 minutes, and then he was grouping at 20 yards, probably 3 4 inch groups. A couple weeks later, he sent me a picture of him, three arrows touching.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and that's 45 minute, one time, 45 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
You, you know,
yeah,
um, you know, if you're open-minded and you're coachable, you can do that. But lots of times, if they're not,
yeah. You
that's
got
what,
to learn on your own. And I'll tell you, when it comes to archery, having somebody like you that has teached or taught archery is such an asset. You could be years ahead if you had an instructor, somebody that knows all the tricks and all the tips, rather than trying to learn on your own like I did. Like I'm still now I'm an open book. I ask so many questions, but I went the first 10 years because I was successful doesn't mean I was doing things right.
right.
My form, everything, how I held my release. I realize now that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I could have been way better because I never
Oh,
grouped good, but for some reason I was successful, and now I realize, wow, if I knew what I knew now back then, forget about it. It'd be way better, way better.
oh yeah, you can spend all that time doing it. Like well, the three examples I give you, the doctor that, well, actually not a doctor, but he had a PhD. I don't remember what he did. He just said he had a PhD, um, but he's going to hang those arrows up in his office. It's like, at that
Yeah.
time, that was like a $10 trophy.
Yeah,
Back
no
then,
doubt.
arrows weren't that expensive, but when you're spending, 130, $140 for a dozen, a half dozen arrows, that
Yeah.
that makes them, kind of expensive,
Yeah.
was
Nowadays
it?
it'd be like a $60 hit.
Right. And then especially when you get, so when you're shooting a broadhead, those, well, my muds had they're like $45 for half a dozen of them. So that's quite a bit. And then you got a shaft,
Yeah.
the 1,000 straightness shaft.
Yeah.
You've got,
Your
30 bucks
outsert
maybe.
insert.
Yeah. You got like 30 bucks probably into an arrow that you hope to get part of it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to make sure you are the best at, like, spending 30 bucks to miss an animal. A lot of times you can find arrows, but or spending 30 bucks to wound an animal, or spend 30 bucks to kill the animal and be able to eat it. Yeah, learn
Yeah.
how to shoot.
Learn how to shoot.
It's
And
not
and
like before
that's
with
it,
aluminum.
isn't it? It's
Yeah,
it's like rifle hunters who, hunting season's a week away. Well, they blow the dust off their rifle and they go out and expect to shoot something. Well, your chances are better as a rifle hunter than as an archery hunter. Archery, you cannot stop training. It's all year. You
right,
got to keep shooting. It's just one of those things that there's so many different points that you have to be on point with. Like it's like golf. There's so many things that you have to do the same in order every time to get your consistency. And even if you don't shoot for a month, even if you don't shoot for a couple weeks and you come back, you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong now? I'm shooting way
right.
right. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot, I gotta do this, I gotta, and you can't just blow the dust off your bow a week before hunting season and expect you to go out and just knock it out of the park and succeed. It's pretty tough to do that.
Well, I made some. If I'm off for a while, I go back and watch my own videos that I'm teaching how
There
to
you
do
go.
stuff, and go back and watch
Yeah.
my own videos. Like, okay, what
Yeah.
one of the things I used to carry with me when I was doing a lot of 3Ds is I'd carry, um, actually, when I had my store, I had a big roll of loop material, camo loop material. So I cut them whatever length I wanted. So I'd make one had a loop that fit around my thumb. There was my draw length. I could put my release to it. So now then I'm going back and I'm releasing, and that string should go straight to where your target is. If you're aiming at your target, go straight to your target. If it's
Right.
not, your form is off. And if you have an open stance, it is not going to leave your hand. It's probably going to hang up on your hand. It's not going to go towards your target. A
Oh.
closed stance, it will go straight to your target. So now there's max amount of force going to your target because everything is to the target. The holding hand goes to target, and the release hand goes away from the target. So it's an
Right.
explosion, a straight line.
Yeah.
That's going to be most
Yeah.
efficient. And you know, I see on tying on string loops that that bothers me sometimes the way that people do them. They insist on tying a knot above their arrow, then putting your loop on. All that's doing is that's causing the string to put an angle up or down on on your arrow. The most efficient way to do it and the best for transferring power is not above the knock and another knot below it and squeezed up against it. No slop for the arrow. To go through that, just look at put a pencil on a table, put your finger on the eraser and push it straight to the tip. That arrow goes straight. Now, turn your hand just slightly off, maybe like 1 degree or half a degree, and push. What's that pencil do? It wants to twist.
Right.
And so now you're putting, like we talked about on limbs, all the forces going forward and then as opposed to counter. Well, if your force is going from the eraser to the tip or your knock to your tip, then you're going to have the most amount of power put into that shaft. And
Right.
and that's why when you set them up, I've set mini bows and shooting through paper, perfect holes every time. Well, not every time, depends on who's shooting it, but that's another story. But the new bows are all center shot risers. So I've got a laser that I take the sight off, put it on,
Oh yeah.
and I line the laser back up onto the string, and then I rotate it out to the tip. If it doesn't hit right on the tip, you adjust your left right on your rest until it does. Now,
Oh, gotcha.
that means the travel of that string is straight down that shaft. So now
Right.
you have the windage adjusted perfectly. And now for elevation, you want to have it go through the burger button there, where it's about half the bottom of the shaft, about halfway down, right in there. You can kind of tweak that a little bit up and down. But now then, you want your riser to be level.
Right.
And a good way to do that is put a level on your string so that it's plumb.
Yeah.
And now then you put a level at the very end of the shaft. So now when that's level and that's plumb, you're right. So you tie on your knot onto the first one. You can slide down, you know where it's at. You tie your second knot, and then now you can adjust that. And once you're ready, with the arrow still on the string, now then you want to pull. I use like an Allen wrench stick in there and pull tight. And now then that arrow is held in one spot every time.
Right.
Some will do a little variation. Now, like I said, if you put a knot in there, now that upper loop is up higher. So now your center of your pull is on the upper part of the knock, not straight through the shaft. So now you're pushing basically, like I said, off to the side of the pencil, and
Oh yeah.
makes it turn. So that gets the elevation and the windage set perfectly along with your string. And now, if you're going to tie a knot, you need to tie one above and below. And how I figured out all this, exactly how it all worked, is when I had my store back when they still had not center shot design risers, where they put them on, you can use stick-ons on the side of your bows. Guy come into
Right.
town, he called me up, says, "Can you set my bow up to shoot 2 arrows?" And I says, "Oh, yeah, I might." He called the other 2 shops in town. He said, "No." They just said no. And I says,
Really.
That's interesting. You can't afford me while I'm open, so show up about 8 o'clock and we'll play.
Ah,
So, so I wanted to try it because you see some of these guys that I forget what his name is that does all the trick shots in archery. That Bob
uh,
Munden, or is he the handgun guy? I forget. Anyway, um, no, no, it was Munden is the handgun guy. Thought I
dude,
almost
perfect. Is
No,
that?
I forget what his name is. He may not be alive anymore. But anyway, so we did is we set it up and we tried. you want to use a release, so we tried putting one in between, and the arrows are just constantly off. And finally, what we did is we had to put, of course, put a knot a knot point above the bottom arrow and tie above the top one and the bottom one. So now you're pulled back, force in between them, and we was able to get a consistent spacing of 1/8 of an inch or less on every shot.
Wow.
So you'd measure the distance between the two shafts. It was consistent every shot.
Oh
And
yeah.
we're tweaking alignment of fletchings and everything else to, see, how that affects it. And, therefore there's off so much like, okay, we're off a long ways. And now they pretty much stayed, the distance apart that they were when they left. And,
Okay.
and that proved right there that your knot has to be at the top of the nock and at the below the nock. Now we had two arrows, so it was above the top one and below the bottom one.
Right.
But we had
Right.
to hold the middle one, so it was still in that level, and then do the top one where it was level. Um, but we had to make sure we put a knot so it wouldn't pull down.
Right.
So we fastened it in, so we had our loop was above the top one, below the bottom one, and
Very
it was
interesting.
consistent spacing every time.
Yeah.
Now the compound bows now with center shot riser, we'd probably have to modify and make a new rest that would hold two arrows, because
Yeah. You
we don't
would.
use stick-ons. You couldn't use a stick-on because it'd be too far to the right or left, depending on right or left-handed bow. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
yeah, yeah, that'd be interesting. And of course, then there's no video of us doing it because how phones didn't have videos in them. you know, that was 20 years ago, a little over 20 years
Yeah.
ago. So
Yeah.
you had a
Hold.
phone that talked. That was about it.
Yeah, that's right. Right. 20 years ago is a long time ago when it comes to technology and
Oh yeah,
stuff, for sure.
yeah. That was um, interesting. You had to figure all this stuff out. So when I was working at
Yeah.
a Bass Pro, and the archery department, guys that come with the older bows and they'd say, "Roy, here's yours," because I was so used to working with the older bows.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for
Then I'd
sure.
have a couple of guys that used to come to my store all the time, and it's like, "Okay, they're coming to me."
Yeah, give it
I
to
said,
Roy. He knows all about that.
yeah. And there's other archers come in and ask for one of us techs, and any of us could have done work just as well. But
Yeah.
they knew that they always wanted to have that one person working on a bow. And there's times when people sit there waiting in line for that one tech, wait 2-3 hours just for them to work on the bow, when there's other ones that don't have a line like that, but they wanted John to work on their
Yeah.
bow. And you know we all knew about the same stuff. So
Yeah, I'm very for, like, I do a lot of my own stuff, but um I have a really good archery tech at Grand Central Archery here in Red Deer, that and it's only under 10 minutes away from my home, and he really enjoys working on my stuff. So I go down there, and if I have any questions, or if I'm just sort of doubting my own abilities, I go to Kevin, and he just snaps me right into place like instantly. And then I'm like, and I'm constantly learning from him, what I did wrong or whatever, and how to improve the shooting ability of my equipment. And so it's really important to have somebody, even if you're just not sure if you're doing something right, to have that bow tech that is close by, that you are pretty confident in. That just helps with your mental brain and how you
yeah,
think everything works, so sure helped me out.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you don't know something, ask. I always say that the only stupid question is the one you didn't ask.
Absolutely. And when it comes down to killing an animal, like, you're just being dumb if you're not making sure that everything is working properly. Like, you're just going to wound something, and and it's just, you got to do better. You got to be
Yeah,
better, you know be the best you can be when you go out there to take something's life. You have to be on top of your game, for sure.
yeah. We kind of covered all kinds of different subjects today, didn't we?
We sure did, man. And yeah, thanks for guiding me through a bit of that. Yeah, I just really enjoyed having this time to talk with you, Roy. It's been a long time coming, and I appreciate you for reaching out, and it really enjoyed my time here with you. It went
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. Oh yeah, it goes quick. That's why I say, I always try to reserve an extra time slot afterward just because, we always run over and
Right.
um, and I'm open to, if anybody's listening or watching and want to come on and talk, you don't have to be an expert.
Yeah.
It's Archer Talk 101, which normally 101 is beginners. And it's here to help beginners. And if you're just starting out or thinking about starting, yeah, hey, let's get on the schedule and just get a hold of me and we'll get you scheduled so you can come on and hey, we'll talk you through getting started.
Yeah,
There's
that's excellent.
I do talk to a lot of people like you that are, have been doing it for a long time, and hey, it's kind of nice to talk to an archer that's just starting out that maybe hadn't got their first bow yet, or
Right.
just got their new first bow.
Yeah.
Let's work through and help you get going. Because
Yeah, that's awesome.
last thing I want to do is see you get out there and wound an animal because you didn't know.
Yeah,
What you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it.
exactly.
You,
Yeah. Oh, you
I don't
mess
think I
it
quite
up.
said that right, but
Yeah, for sure. Well, I definitely have some people that I think should be on here talking with you. So
yeah,
I'll reach out to a couple people, and even my partner. My partner's a little more of the technical side of our arrow company, but he's got some great stories too, and that might
yeah.
be fun listening to him on here.
Well, you got a link to my calendar, so just say, hey,
You
just go in
betcha.
there and it'll show up. It's a podcast, and we'll get on. We'll talk about it. And pretty much if
Right
it's
on.
open on my calendar, then I'm available. So
Well, thank you so much, Roy. I really enjoyed myself today. And hopefully we can do this again here sometime when I
yeah,
have
yeah,
another adventure.
yeah, another venture or you know, hey, if you have a new item come out on your website or something, hey,
Yeah,
let's get back on. Let's talk about that new thing you got coming out. You
you
know,
betcha.
that's I'm open to anything that helps the archery community out. And like I said, even if you have a business that's not archery related, hey, we'll promote that as well. The only requirement is we
Fantastic.
start talking archery. Where we
Awesome,
get
man.
into is that I've had some where we started talking archery. Next thing we're talking about nothing to do with archery. It's just wherever it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The subject matter is whatever we talk about next.
Right. You never know
Yeah.
what's going to come up.
Yeah, we just start archery and then go from there. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
been a lot of fun talking with you, and yeah, let's get on here and do this. We'll do this again. And I said if you have a cool adventure or if you want more than one person at a time, we can do. Well, actually, I got the paid version of Zoom, so I can have 100 different connections
Oh,
and talk for
wow.
30 hours.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not doing 100 connections. I'm not talking for 30 hours, but that's the
Right.
paid version. So there's no limit to where we're getting at. And um, if you know anybody what's beyond, hey, just let them know. And
Okay.
you have the link, so send them the link. And those listening or watching, if you want to be a guest on the show, hey, I'm open to listening to and talking with just about anybody out there. Like I said, we just start talking archery, and then we go from there. And if you have a business, well, we'll promote that too. So it's been a lot of fun talking with you, and I learned some stuff about it. It's like I think I know what I'd be getting for arrows if I didn't have so many on hand.
Right on. Right on. Well, that's good, man. We're just going to keep plugging away and try to bring our arrows to the masses, and there's no quit in us. So we're gonna, and I appreciate you having me on to let me sort of talk about our Killin Stix Arrow Company. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. I've enjoyed it. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been host today on Arch Talk 101, and we'll catch you on the next one.